Hello friends, it's 7:30 p.m. and you are tuned to the General Overseas Service of All India Radio, the voice of the nation. We are here with news, views, celebrity endorsements, write-ups, videos, vox pop, tips of the day and music for your listening pleasure. So happy tuning in.
This is the General Overseas Service of All India Radio. Namaskar. The news snippets. Read by Maria Albina Michael. Prime Minister Narendra Modi announces Pradhan Mantri Ann Kalyan Yojana to be extended till November. 5 kilograms of rice or wheat free to each family member, amounting to 80 crore Indians. The total cost of the scheme would be borne by the government. Prime Minister urges people to strictly follow social distancing norms, hand hygiene and wearing of masks, civic authorities to implement these strictly. Prime Minister asks people to be vigilant during monsoon as it brings along many diseases like fever, cold and cough. 334,822 people have recovered from COVID-19 in the country. In the past 24 hours, 13,099 patients have recovered in India. National recovery rate is above 59%. Delhi has registered a recovery rate of 66% with more than 56,000 recoveries out of 85,161 total cases. 210,292 tests for COVID-19 were conducted in the last 24 hours. More than 90 lakh tests have been done in the country since the pandemic outbreak. 2 terrorists have been killed by security forces in Anantnag, Jammu and Kashmir. In Bijbehara, in a search operation to flush out terror modules, 2 terrorists were killed. Pakistan has once again violated the ceasefire in Naugam sector, Baramulla district. Pakistan resorted to heavy firing with mortars. India has responded to the ceasefire violation. Corps commander level talks between India and China are presently on at Chushul, Ladakh. This is the third time talks are taking place since the standoff began in eastern Ladakh. Unlock 2 to begin from tomorrow. Many restrictions have been further eased. Night curfew to remain from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. More train and air services to resume in a calibrated manner. International air services, metro, rail, all educational institutions, gyms, swimming pools, cinema halls, political and religious gatherings will remain banned till 31st July. And that is the end of the news snippets.
In 2015, as world leaders prepared themselves to adopt the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, India was ready. India had played a leading role in shaping the Sustainable Development Goals, which aim to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that all people enjoy peace and prosperity by 2030. India's vision of Sabka Saath Sabka Vikas was already mirrored in the SDGs, and the world's largest democracy was already moving swiftly to nationalize the goals. Today, India continues to grow rapidly. But as home to 1/6 of the world's population, a large responsibility of the SDGs lies with India. Undoubtedly, if India meets the SDGs, the world will meet the SDGs. The Government of India continues to demonstrate its commitment to the SDGs by taking credible actions to drive the progress of the SDGs based on the National Indicator Framework developed by the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation in collaboration with the line ministries. For better monitoring, India needs reliable data, but the challenges of working with SDG-related data are many. This is especially true for geographically vast, thickly populated countries like India, where data is gathered from multiple sources at grassroots level. and stored across multiple systems. A question then arises: could technology address these challenges? Is there a way for policymakers to get a consolidated view of all the data and insights they need to power data-driven decision-making? The Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, in collaboration with the UN in India, present the India Sdg Dashboard, the first ever SDG platform for India that pulls together critical data from over 100 different data sets, portals and sectors onto an easy-to-use, intuitive system to effectively track India's progress on the SDGs. Let's look at some of the key features of the dashboard. The Sdg Dashboard shows the interlinkages between each goal, maps data for over 130 key indicators, view all targets measured against national benchmarks with state and district filters. Through the dashboard, you can check state or district-wise performance scores for each goal, leverage data-driven insights to roll out targeted development plans and improve decision-making, and identify which targets are lagging and need urgent action. The Sdg Dashboard, a first of its kind, is ready to power India's vision to leave no one behind.
This week we share tips for time management. Time management is one of those issues we all face, but ironically feel like we don't have time to address. But as Benjamin Franklin once said, time is like money. Without being managed properly, how do you know where it's going? This series is inspired by quotes of some influential people from the world who did their bit. Quote, "If I had 6 hours to chop down a tree, I would spend the first 4 hours sharpening an axe." This is a quote of Abraham Lincoln. While focus is important during the workday, too long spent in a focused state can start to backfire. Your mind naturally wanders. When our energy levels dip, our bodies start to crave movement and our attention flatters. A growing body of research has found that micro breaks, which are frequent short breaks taken throughout the day, can be just as or more beneficial as long breaks. Micro breaks impose small interruptions in your focus to ease your body and reboot your brain. Just a few minutes or less of distraction can have a disproportionately powerful impact on your productivity. What to do? Here are some tips. Practice breathing exercises to lower stress. Workplace stress triggers out fight or flight response, which brings on alleviated anxiety and reduces our cognitive abilities. To break out of this feeling, you can try a simple breathing technique. Sit somewhere comfortable with a straight back. Close your eyes and begin breathing through your nose. Inhale for a count of 2. Hold your breath for a count of 1. Exhale gently through your mouth for a count of 4. Finish by holding your breath for 1 second and then repeat. Stretch, walk and move your body to counteract too much sitting. Most of us spend all day sitting in front of a television, which can lead to all sorts of health issues. Get some fresh air and be in nature. Spending even just a few minutes during a micro break outside on the balcony or on your terrace can boost your cognitive functions. Drink more water. Pretty much everyone could be drinking more water during the day. Being properly hydrated increases your physical performance, keeps you motivated, and improves your focus. Watch a funny video. It might seem counterintuitive to try and boost focus by doing something distracting. However, even a brief focused mental break from your task can be enough to reboot your thinking. We all work better when we take some breaks. No matter how busy you think you might be, you're never too busy for a micro break. Taking even just a couple of minutes to let your body and mind recharge can do wonders for your productivity, focus, and health. We will be back again same time and channel with another inspiring tip to help you manage your time well. Until then, let the clock tick with a smile. We now present a power spacewalk outside the space station on This Week at NASA.
A power spacewalk outside the space station, honoring a former hidden figure, and a way cool find of a hot Jupiter. A few of the stories to tell you about this week at NASA.
I am clear. Cheddar's clear. Bob can double check me. I verify you're clear.
On June 26th, our Chris Cassidy and Bob Behnken worked outside the International Space Station to replace aging nickel-hydrogen batteries in one of the station's power channels with new lithium-ion batteries.
All right, Bob, finally heading your way. Sounds good.
The battery replacement work is the culmination of power upgrade spacewalks that began in January 2017. On June 24th, our Administrator Jim Bridenstine announced that our headquarters building in Washington, D.C. will be named after Mary W. Jackson, the first African-American female engineer at NASA. Jackson was part of a group of very important women whose math and scientific acumen helped to safely get American astronauts to space and back. These women were portrayed in the book Hidden Figures and popular movie of the same name. Our planet-hunting TESS spacecraft and data from our recently retired Spitzer Space Telescope helped identify the youngest known hot Jupiter, a type of gas-dominated exoplanet that orbits extremely close to its parent star. The planet, located about 490 light-years from Earth, is believed to be less than 17 million years old and could teach us more about how planets form throughout the universe. The Moon in the binary near-Earth asteroid system Didymos, that was previously known as Didymos B, has been officially named Dimorphos. In 2022, it will be the target of our double asteroid redirection test, the first full-scale demonstration of an asteroid deflection technology for planetary defense. We've started a new effort to enable astronauts, principal investigators, and other NASA personnel to fly on future commercial suborbital space flights. These flights are anticipated to be more accessible, affordable, and available than missions to the International Space Station and could provide additional commercial human space flights for research, training, and testing activities. Our Solar Dynamics Observatory has been watching the sun for over a decade. This 10-year time-lapse compresses each day into a second, showing the rise and fall in solar activity and notable events like transiting planets and eruptions. That's what's up this week at NASA. For more on these and other stories, follow us on the web at nasa.gov/twan.
Sandra Kiley is an animal rights activist from New Zealand and is also the owner of End Animal Slaughter website, which she started in 2018 with the goal of closing all slaughterhouses in the Western world by 2025. Today, Sandra Kiley shares with us an article on arguments for eating meat debunked. Millions of people all over the world are cutting back on meat or giving it up altogether. This is because of compelling evidence that plant-based is the best diet and that overconsumption of meat and dairy leads to disease, pollution, deforestation, biodiversity loss, and global warming. The animal agriculture sector is trying to fight back against the trend to veganism with counter-arguments which Guardian Environment editor Damien Carrington debunks. Whether you're concerned about your health, the environment, or animal welfare, scientific evidence is piling up that meat-free diets are best. Millions of people in wealthy nations are already cutting back on animal products. Of course, livestock farmers and meat lovers are unsurprisingly fighting back, and it can get confusing. Are avocados really worse than beef? What about bee massacring and almond production? The coronavirus pandemic has added another ingredient to that mix. The rampant destruction of the natural world is seen as the root cause of diseases, leaping into humans, and is largely driven by farming expansion. The world's top biodiversity scientists say even more deadly pandemics will follow unless the ecological devastation is rapidly halted. Food is also a vital part of our culture, while the affordability of food is an issue of social justice. So there isn't a single perfect diet, but the evidence is clear. Whichever healthy and sustainable diet you choose, it is going to have much less red meat and dairy than today's standard Western diets, and quite possibly none. That's for two basic reasons. First, the overconsumption of meat is causing an epidemic of disease. With about $285 billion spent every year around the world treating illness caused by eating red meat alone. Second, eating plants is simply a far more efficient use of the planet's stretched resources than feeding the plants to animals and then eating them. The global livestock herd and the grain it consumes takes up 83% of global farmland, but produces just 18% of food calories. So what about all those arguments in favor of meat eating and against vegan diets? The ninth claim: avocados are causing droughts in places. Again, the problem here is the rapid growth of production in specific regions that lack prudent controls on water use, like Peru and Chile. Avocados generate 3 times less emissions than chicken, 4 times less than pork, and 20 times less than beef. If you are still worried about avocados, you can of course choose not to eat them. But it's not a reason to eat meat instead, which has a much bigger water and deforestation footprint. The market is likely to solve the problem, as the high demand from consumers for avocados and almonds incentivizes farmers elsewhere to grow the crops, thereby alleviating the pressure on current production hotspots. The 10th claim: quinoa boom is harming poor farmers in Peru and Bolivia. Quinoa is an amazing food and has seen a boom, but the idea that this took food from the mouths of poor farmers is wrong. The claim that rising quinoa prices were hurting those who had traditionally produced and consumed it is patently false, said researchers who studied the issue. Quinoa was never a staple food, representing just a few % of the food budget of these people. The quinoa boom has had no effect on their nutrition. The boom also significantly boosted the farmers' income. There is an issue with falling soil quality as the land is worked harder, but quinoa is now planted in China, India and Nepal, as well as in the US and Canada, easing the burden. The researchers are more worried now about the loss of income for South American farmers as the quinoa supply rises and the price falls. The 10th claim: what about palm oil destroying rainforests and orangutans? Palm oil plantations have indeed led to terrible deforestation. But that is an issue for everybody, not only vegans. It's in about half of all products on supermarket shelves, both food and toiletries. The International Union for the Conservation of Nature argues that choosing sustainably produced palm oil is actually positive, because other oil crops take up more land. But Poor says, we are abandoning millions of acres a year of oilseed land around the world, including rapeseed and sunflower fields in the former Soviet regions and traditional olive plantations. Making better use of this land would be preferable to using palm oil, he says. Healthy questions. The 12th claim: vegans don't get enough B12, making them stupid. A vegan diet is generally very healthy, but doctors have warned about the potential lack of B12, an important vitamin for brain function that is found in meat, eggs, and cow's milk. This is easily remedied by taking a supplement. However, a closer look reveals some surprises. B12 is made by bacteria and soil and the guts of animals, and free-range livestock ingest the B12 as they graze and peck the ground. But most livestock are not free-range, and pesticides and antibiotics widely used on farms kill the B12 producing bugs. The result is that most B12 supplements, 90% according to one source, are fed to livestock, not people. So there is a choice here between taking a B12 supplement yourself or eating an animal that has been given the supplement. Algae are a plant-based source of B12, although the degree of bioavailability is not settled yet. It is also worth noting that a significant number of non-vegans are B12 deficient, especially older people. Among vegans, the figure is only about 10%. The 13th claim, plant-based alternatives to meat are really unhealthy. The rapid rise of the plant-based burger has prompted some to criticize them as ultra-processed junk food. A plant-based burger could be unhealthier if the salt levels are very high, says Springman, but it is most likely to still be healthier than a meat burger when all nutritional factors are considered, particularly fiber. Furthermore, replacing a beef burger with a plant-based alternative is certain to be less damaging to the environment. There is certainly a strong argument to be made that overall we eat far too much processed food, but that applies just as much to meat eaters as to vegetarians and vegans. And given that most people are unlikely to give up their burgers and sausages anytime, the plant-based options are a useful alternative. You were listening to Sandra Kiley, an animal rights activist from New Zealand, sharing an article by Damien Carrington on arguments for eating meat debunked.
You are with us on the General Overseas Service of All India Radio. We now bring you today's commentary. China's belligerence receives international flack. It is scripted by Dr. Roop Narayan Das, strategic analyst on Chinese affairs, and read by Kaushik Rai. At a time when China's image has taken a beating due to its failure to share information with regard to the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic, its belligerent behavior too has been condemned by the 10-nation ASEAN group that held its virtual meeting in Manila last week. The group reiterated its position that the 1982 United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, is the basis for determining the maritime entitlement, sovereign rights and legitimate interests over maritime zones. This further exposed Beijing's obduracy and its scant regard for international law. It is unfortunate that at a time when the world is busy fighting the pandemic, which incidentally originated in Wuhan, China's belligerence is on ascendancy, be it in Hong Kong or saber-rattling in the Taiwan Straits or at the line of actual control in the India-China border. In April this year, in a wanton act, a Chinese ship sank a Vietnamese boat with a crew of 8 on board near the disputed Paracel Islands in the South China Sea. 2 Vietnamese fishing boats attempting to rescue Vietnamese fishermen were detained by the Chinese. It is against this backdrop of China's high-handedness that the ASEAN statement was issued. This move has received international traction. Some Southeast Asian diplomats have said that this statement marked a significant strengthening of the regional bloc's assertion of rule of law in a disputed region that has long been regarded as an ASEAN flashpoint. While earlier the association had criticized the aggressive behavior in the disputed waters, ASEAN had never castigated China in its post-summit communique. Incidentally, Vietnam is the current chair of ASEAN. India and Vietnam have always enjoyed strong bonds. The two nations are linked culturally, historically, and politically. India's stance on the South China Sea dispute has added a new dimension to its relationship with Vietnam and New Delhi's engagement with the countries of the region as a whole. China's assertive behavior has impelled other countries of the region, including Vietnam, to look towards India for peace and stability in the region. India has consistently supported freedom of navigation at multilateral fora like ASEAN summits and in bilateral joint declaration including the US, Japan, Indonesia and Vietnam. India's naval exercises in South China Sea and patrolling in the sea also indicates India's strong strategic support to Vietnam. India's defense, particularly naval cooperation with Vietnam and the credit line to Vietnam during the visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi for acquiring high-speed patrol boats from India also reflects New Delhi's concerns and commitment to Vietnam's territorial security and sovereignty. The world is not only fighting against China's aggressive behavior in the sea and on land, but also a virtual war against COVID-19. Many nations believe that had China shared information regarding the outbreak of the pandemic in time, a lot of preventive measures could have been implemented, and that would have minimized the loss of precious human lives and suffering. The World Health Assembly on May 20th adopted a resolution supported by 122 countries which called for the world to identify the zoonotic source of the virus and the route of introduction to the human population, including the possible role of intermediate hosts. As chair of the WHO Executive Board this year, India is mandated to take a call on the resolution on the COVID-19. New Delhi is of the view that the resolution adopted at the World Health Assembly is an opportunity to use facts and science to assess our response to the pandemic and take lessons to prepare for future. As chair of the WHO Executive Board, India is ready to work towards these goals. The World Health Assembly is expected to take a call on Taiwan's aspiration for observer status in the global body. Taiwan attended the World Health Assembly as an observer in 2009, making its first participation in the activity of UN since its withdrawal in 1971. That was today's commentary entitled China's Belligerence Receives International Flack. It was scripted by Dr. Ruth Narayan Das, Strategic Analyst on Chinese Affairs, and read by Kaushik Rai. This broadcast came to you from the General Overseas Service of All India Radio.
And now listen to our beautiful song in the voice of Manudeep Mandi Shrimani.